Om Guruve Namaha. 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 Hello, and welcome to Circle of Divine Tarot Series. And my name is Nina Ashby, and I'm here with my wonderful co-presenter,
Ajose.
And we're back again to explain the introduction to the Major Arcana cards of the Tarot. So in our previous introductions, we mentioned the Major Arcana, but now we're going to go into a little bit more depth, and we want to remind you about what the Major Arcana is and why it's so important.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And through this podcast?
No. Forget the series.
Yeah,
just to explain why it's important. You don't have to repeat what I've said, which is what you usually do.
I don't normally do that. Okay. And the importance of knowing the journey through the Major Arcana is that it allows us to be able to understand what we are going through internally and our own internal journey. And even though it may and can manifest as a series of events in our external world, essentially everything within our external world is nothing but a reflection within our internal self. So the Major Arcana puts meaning, puts understanding, and puts depth into that particular experience that we are that we're going through at that particular time in our life.
Yeah, and we call it the journey of the Fool because each of the cards is numbered from 0, which is the Fool, mm-hmm. to the World, which is card number 21. And that card, these cards is framework of a personal journey of spiritual and personal growth from the beginning of something to the end of something is what's embodied in each of these cards. And we're going to take you on that journey. So this, remember, Major Arcana, it's relating to the individual's internal state, psycho-spiritual state.
Certainly. And we, in the further series, we are going to be talking about the Minor Arcana as well, and we'll be taking you through the procedures of how to read and understand those. Mm-hmm. And further down the line as well, we'll be explaining how to read the hows, the whys, the whens.
So watch this space.
Yeah, definitely.
Watch this space.
Yeah.
So to get back to the Major Arcana,
yes.
I think it's really important to kind of flag up the fact that we have 4 different decks here. Now there are many, many tarot decks,
yeah.
and I think that everybody who starts to do tarot, they start with one deck, and then all of a sudden their collection starts to grow. I must have 30 decks of cards, and each...
Only 30?
That's a lot. And each deck has a different artist that works on it. So there's a personal interpretation going on it, and a personal style or slant to each of the cards.
Definitely.
Now, tarot is a visual journey that incorporates color and sometimes numbers, mm-hmm. and sometimes words, but is primarily a visual tool that suggests things to your imagination. A young person, it could be mostly a young man, but it could be kind of unisex. Mm. And this young person is obviously starting out on some kind of journey. Yeah. Sometimes they're walking off a cliff, or on the top of a mountain, or walking in space, or starting on a new sea voyage. It's all the same kind of information. It's a new beginning, a fresh beginning. And the youthful nature of the Fool is, like fools rush in where angels fear to tread. It's something adventurous, daring. It could be seem to be foolish by some people, but it also is a card that indicates it's a good time to take a risk.
Yeah. It's sort of like the journey into the unknown. And as Nina's quite really pointed out, the Fool is stepping off this cliff or this precipice, one could say, and he's sort of like totally unaware. He's living in the now. He's living in the moment. So there's a young, innocence, naive kind of energy about this particular card. So when this card is definitely drawn, and again, everything has to be in context, but generally speaking, when this card is particularly drawn, depending on which context it's relating to, it's indicating a particular time of initiating, beginning. It may not necessarily have any kind of direction, but nevertheless, there is that kind of wanting to go out there, experience something new, live in the moment, take a risk.
Explore, expand your universe, and relish not knowing what's going to happen. Just a sense of freedom that you get, not being too controlled about things. It's also understanding what your resources are, and that there's always the light behind you. So often there's a sun or brightness, and there's often a dog in these, and dogs are about faithfulness. So,
and it's also about the instincts. The Fool, the dog also is indicating the instinctual. Very often the dog is sort of like jumping up, trying to grab the Fool's attention. So it's also indication that the Fool may not necessarily be listening to his own instinctual side, and he's, like I say, he's just lost in the moment, living in the moment. Very often he's always carrying a pouch. He's got a rod with a pouch on, and it is said that the pouch contains all of the wisdom and the tools that is needed for his journey. I mean, these pouches, in the olden days, they were things that, So the following card after the Fool, which is the number, the Fool was the number 0, we come on to the number 1. Number 1 is the Magician. Very often it's depicted with, again, very often it's a young man. Very often he's at a table, and he has what is known as the 4 elements, situated on the table.
The magical instruments relating to the 4 elements.
Yes. And the Magician essentially is associated with one's skill, one's ability. When it comes up, again, depending on the context of the reading, it indicates that the individual has there are options, there is an awareness, there is an ability to perhaps produce something. Hence why the magicians are known to be able to create something. So it's a card essentially that's indicating opportunities, new skills that perhaps that can be developed for that particular individual, depending on the context, and a new direction in life where the person can be also heading and produce something of value for themselves.
For me, the Magician card also means that relating to the creativity of the individual, it's time for them to set new intentions, because magicians make magic by creating an intention and then bringing the elements together in order to create something physical. So this is the precursor to actual making, the earthing of an intention. It's like, what do you want to do? So when the Magician card shows up, it says, you are number 1. You have choices in your world. You are the magician. By making those choices and setting your intention, you can then start down the road of creation.
Indicates also, it's sort of like a connection between 2 worlds. It's like the abstract world and the physical world, and having the ability to be able to connect. So when I'm in the abstract world, I'm in the world of ideas. So your ability to perhaps an idea and be able to bring that idea down into physical manifestation. So
the High Priestess card is card number 2. And this card from the number speaks of polarity. So it's the magician and the high priestess follow one another because we have a masculine and now we have the feminine energy. And 2 is a number of choices and polarity, just in a very simplistic way. So what is the high priestess? The high priestess also has this ability to reach up into the spiritual realm and get information. She is the repository of wisdom and of the mysteries. And she's often standing between 2 pillars. And these pillars represent the portals of the mysteries. She's can hold the book of knowledge or an apple or other kinds of symbols of, that she's taken from the fruits of wisdom. When high priestess shows up in your spread or in your tarot, what you will know is you're talking about somebody who's withdrawn from the world. So it is important to understand that either that person is currently withdrawn from the world or standing back in some kind of way and perhaps not sharing her wisdom, or that they require sharing their wisdom. Now, what's interesting as well is if you have this kind of card, a feminine card for a woman, it's kind of obvious. But if you have it for a man, men also have that internal feminine side. So it's saying you need to get in touch with your wisdom, with your receptivity, and to work on your spiritual knowledge and withdraw from being out in the world so much. Most
definitely. So as Nina quite rightly said, the card also, in addition to that, is it's almost like it's pointing towards using your intuition. Trust your intuition on some level. Very often with the masculine card, the card previous where we had the magician, is much more mental orientated, whereas with the high priestess, it's much more intuitive. It's much more going with that what we would describe as one's gut feeling, or the emotional, or the heart. The
psychic card. That person needs to learn about their psychic abilities, to learn to master those abilities, and the only way you can do that is through meditation, going within and contemplating.